It should be no surprise that if we ask people what holiday is central to Sefer Shmot, they would answer Pesach or Hag Hamatzot. While Shavuot and Sukkot are also mentioned twice, albeit in their agricultural context, hidden under the surface is Yom Kippur. There are two instances Rashi mentions as having taken place Mimochrat Yom Kippurim, on the day after Yom Kippur. In our Parsha Vayakhel, Rashi comments on the first verse, Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael, that Moshe called the whole community of Israel to assemble. Rashi says, L'mimachret Yom Kippurim, kisheyared minahar, that Moshe assembled the people after Yom Kippur, when he came down from the mountain. Here Rashi explains when Moshe told the people about the command to build the Mishkan, and it is part of a broader discussion among the Meforshim. When was the command of the Mishkan actually given? Did it precede or follow the Egel HaZahav? This does, of course, have far-reaching implications for our understanding of the purpose of the Mishkan. Was it always intended, or was it a response to the Egel? However, I want to focus, for homiletical purposes perhaps, on Rashi's use of Mimochrat Yom Kippurim. From a chronological viewpoint, Moshe comes down the mountain on the 10th of Tishrei, which will become Yom Kippur, and the story of the golden calf shapes our understanding of many aspects of Yom Kippur. For sure, the reconciliation of God and Israel after the Egel happened on Yom Kippur, and the Mishkan is also impossible without it. But in juxtaposing the two together, is there an ongoing message that perhaps we should consider? There was a similar use by Rashi of Yom Kippur in Exodus 18:13. Vayhimi macharat vayeshev Moshe lishpot et ha'am. It came on the next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And Rashi comments on Vayhimi macharat, Motzoi Yom Kippurim haya. Kach shaninu besifrei umahu mimacharat lemacharat ridato minahar. It came about on the next day. This was the day after Yom Kippur. This is what we learned in the Sifrei. That was actually in the Mechilta. Now, what is meant by on the next day? On the day after Moses' descent from the mountain. Here, too, Rashi is offering a chronology of when did Moshe begin to act as judge for the people. Since Yitro is a key player in the story, the Torah combines his reunion with Moshe after Yetziat Mitzrayim and his wise counsel to Moshe, combines it into one chapter, despite there being a time gap between the two events. Moshe begins to judge Mimacharat, which is Mimacharat Yom Kippurim. Rav Soloveitchik, in a Yortzeit drasha entitled Justice, Peace, and Charity, says that Mimacharat can mean persistent identity of time and events and the lingering on of experience. Moshe judging Mimacharat Yom Kippurim implies that justice and Yom Kippur are interrelated. In Rav Soloveitchik's words, Moshe judged only Mimacharat Yom Kippurim. Moshe always remembered while he was sitting in judgment that to practice mishpat and act like a shofet, one must be aware of the Yom Kippur outlook on guilt and innocence, on crime, punishment, and reconciliation. The day of judgment must always fall on the morrow of Yom Kippur, appended to the day that symbolizes par excellence the ideals of the judicial action, grace and love. Any day in which Moses played the role of a justice was Mimacharat, attached to Yom Kippur or to the experience he lived through on Mount Sinai when the Almighty descended in a pillar of cloud. I would like to formally extend this role of the judge to all of us. Do we, after Yom Kippur, while maybe not be formally acting as judges, do we in our interpersonal relationships carry this consciousness of Yom Kippur and engage others with grace and love? After all our preparations for Yom Kippur, how do we carry ourselves in it in our lives on the next day? Can every day be Mimacharat Yom Kippurim for ourselves? We can certainly understand and extend Rashi's use of Mimacharat Yom Kippurim in our Parsha as well. The very possibility of building the Mishkan of V'shachanti b'tocham can only come after Yom Kippur and the reconciliation of God and Israel after the golden calf. The Mishkan embodies and continues the idea of the grace and love of Yom Kippur that allows God to dwell in our midst. And though we can only today build a metaphorical Mishkan in our hearts, do we allow a Yom Kippur consciousness of grace and love to motivate us to give our truma, our gifts to God? In a post-Mishkan time, how can we respond to Kehume itchem truma l'Hashem, taking our gifts for God? While it is not formally perhaps a mitzvah, nonetheless it is worthy of exhortation. Take from among you gifts to God, everyone whose heart is so moved. What are the gifts, the best we have to offer of ourselves, that we can bring to God and our community?